to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. I'm your host, Mark Gunn. The views expressed on this program are those of the host and guests and not necessarily reflective of anyone or any entity associated with this broadcast. This episode, to white America from black America. We tried to tell y'all. Black people have been warning America that if it didn't get its racial house in order, bad things will happen. Case in point, the domestic terrorist attack on the Capitol last Wednesday. We tried to warn you about the dangers of electing Donald Trump as president. Some of you knew and elected him anyway.
There are people who warned over and over that electing Donald Trump would be bad for America. There are even people who predicted this moment in American history that we now find ourselves in. These people are Republicans.
I will not stop until we fight a man that chooses not to disavow the KKK. That is not a part of our party. That's not who we want as president. We will not allow that in our country.
I'm thinking, how did we get the race for the most important office in the free world to sink to such depths? And how could anyone in my party think that this clown is fit to be president?
He's a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. You know how you make America great again? Tell Donald Trump to go to hell.
To me, a racist statement's a racist statement. I don't like what Donald Trump said. Donald Trump has shown himself to be a showman. I don't think he's a serious candidate.
You, sir, are the distraction. Your conduct, sir, is the distraction. Mr. Trump, that I respectfully ask you, with all due respect, to step aside, step down, allow someone else to carry the banner of these principles.
During anxious times, it can be tempting to follow the siren call of the angriest voices.
I'm out. I can no longer endorse Donald Trump for president.
He doesn't know the difference between truth and lies. He lies practically every word that comes out of his mouth.
We're on the verge of having someone take over the conservative movement and the Republican Party who's a con artist.
I just really believe that the Republican Party has been conned here, and this guy is not a reliable conservative Republican. This is a defining moment for the Republican Party.
That is not who our Republican Party is. That's not who America is.
Donald Trump's candidacy is a cancer on conservatism, and it must be clearly diagnosed, excised, and discarded.
Now, all of those Republicans went on to broadly support or to work for President Trump's administration, ignoring his nods to extremists, acting like they didn't see his tweets, playing whataboutism with liberals instead of acknowledging the uniquely troubling nature of President Trump. And all of that emboldened him to fulfill the predictions of these very Republicans who sounded the alarm on Donald Trump and then pretended for years that it wasn't going off. Senator Rand Paul knew what would happen.
If no one stands up to a bully will just keep doing what they're doing.
But he didn't stand up. He stood back and stood by. Of all the Republican predictions, Marco Rubio's may have been the most prescient of all of them. The warnings that he gave before he drank the Kool-Aid, at times sipping tepidly with a scrunched up face to protest the taste, as if that would make the difference.
There's only one presidential candidate who has violence at their events.
Leadership is not about going to an angry and frustrated people and saying, you should be even angrier and more frustrated. That is not leadership. You know what that is? That's called demagoguery.
Rubio also warned, quote, "You mark my words. These are people that whether it's now or 5 years from now or 2 years from now or 6 months from now are going to be explaining for a long time how they fell into this." He said, quote, "If we're going to be the party of fear, we're going to spend some time in the wilderness. If we're the party of fear with a candidate who basically is trying to prey upon people's fears to get them to vote for them, I think we're going to pay a big price in November and beyond." He said, "I don't know how this is all going to end. This is uncharted territory." Senator Rubio knew that. His Republican colleagues knew that. And yet only one Republican senator has consistently stood up to Trump before and after this election, and it's Mitt Romney. This was Romney in March of 2016.
He has neither the temperament nor the judgment to be president, and his personal qualities would mean that America would cease to be a shining city on a hill.
Mitt Romney was the lone Republican who voted to convict Trump in his impeachment trial, and he has been living on an island all by himself, standing up to the president. No one visits, not even for a long weekend. Some say they might, like Senators Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Ben Sasse, but they don't really mean it, and they don't. Romney predicted disruption and worse, with Trump supporters gathering in Washington. And as senators were being evacuated from the Capitol, he summoned a reporter from the New York Times over and he told him, quote, "This is what the president has caused today, this insurrection." The day before the siege on the Capitol, Romney was heckled at the airport as he traveled to Washington to vote to certify Joe Biden's Electoral College win.
Traitor! 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 Traitor!
A lot of Republicans decided they didn't want to live with that. But now they will have to live with themselves, knowing that before they were sycophants, they were psychics.
And when thousands of so-called patriots descended on the Capitol and all hell broke loose, America was exposed on many different fronts.
Angela Rye, I, for one, and I'm sure many people around the country, including you, were not shocked or surprised that this was inevitable. This was bound to happen because Donald Trump has been stoking this sort of thing for years. And today, actually moments before it happened, he stood there and encouraged people to do it.
Don, I didn't just sit and watch. I talked to many of the members of Congress who I used to work for. Many of them who, when they were coming into Congress, talked to them about staffing up their offices. I had friends who still work on Capitol Hill, and I was not just angry and frustrated by the fact that when you are, as Amanda so aptly put it, a white domestic terrorist protesting God knows what, but frankly, fake news and fake tweets, versus if you are a protester trying to survive, trying to just breathe in this country, but you look like me or you are standing in solidarity with people who look like me, you are shot, you are tased, you are hit with rubber bullets. I have a little brother named Deion Jones who was hit in the face with a rubber bullet in California and severely traumatized. But when you look very different and you believe that you own a house that was built by enslaved people, you can go in and leave notes on Nancy Pelosi's desk. You can go in and threaten the lives of people who I worked with. So I didn't just watch. I mourned. I grieved. I was stressed out. I had anxiety sky high. I haven't felt that way since 9/11, honestly. And what I'm thinking about, listening to people talk today and putting this blame right at the feet of Donald Trump. The fact that Donald Trump won an election, it was not just about Donald Trump winning an election. It was about Donald Trump saying that Barack Obama wasn't born here. It was about a Republican Party that implemented a Southern strategy. It is every time when I say Black Lives Matter or people who look like me say that, and the response is Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter. It is all of those things. It is not Donald Trump. It is white supremacy. It is oppression. It is hatred in this country. It is both sides and otherism. It is all of that. And those are the things that we have to deal with and finally reckon with. The fact that the foundation of this country is, in fact, fatally flawed. And we have to deal with that immediately. Members of Congress have been saying this was a problem and this was going to happen. We've all said this was a problem and this was going to happen. And I don't have any patience for, and I'm trying to find the space in my spirit for the empathy to just tap into people who might just be waking up. But pardon my frustration because I've been woke, right? I've been living this life. I'm the daughter of an activist who also suffered from death threats. This is not new to us. For everybody, including President-elect Biden, saying this is not who we are, unfortunately it is. And as long as we continue to deny that, that is exactly what we'll be.
America's racial double standard, front and center. The pitiful response from Capitol Police and the immediate what-if questions.
I don't think this would have happened with Black Lives Matters protesters.
Let me tell you something. We don't have to even go there. If these insurrectionists were black, they would have been shot in the face. And my God, if these insurrectionists were Muslim, they would have been sniped from the top of buildings. So I want to know from the Capitol Hill Police, what is it? Is it just white people? Or is it Donald Trump supporters? Why do you scream at people for walking across the street 3 blocks away from the Capitol? Why are you known as badasses around the Capitol? But then Trump supporters come in and you open the doors for them. You open the doors for them and let them breach the people's house. What is wrong with you?
Just about every major news outlet and political pundit asked, What if the protesters were black?
A little over an hour and a half after the chaos started, I got a text from my granddaughter, Finnegan Biden, who's a senior in her last semester at the University of Pennsylvania. She sent me a photo of military people in full military gear, scores of them lining the steps of the Lincoln Memorial because of protests by Black Lives Matter. She said, "Pop, this isn't fair. No one can tell me that if had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, they wouldn't have been treated very, very differently than the mob of thugs that stormed the Capitol." We all know that's true.
As it turns out, some of the cops were in on the terrorist attack.
Here's how I know that law enforcement can respond differently. I watched what happened in Lafayette Square when the president and members of his cabinet staff and family wanted to go across the street, hold a Bible aloft, and have a photo op in front of a burned-out church basement. How do you think police would have responded differently had this been a Black Lives Matter protest?
I don't have to think, I know. I remember in 2014 when the police declared it illegal to stand still with their 5-second rule. So we literally walked in circles. We certainly would never have been allowed to storm a federal building. I was one of many people who was a defendant on a case that has now been thrown out, but I was accused of inciting a riot in Baton Rouge during the peaceful protest after the killing of Alton Sterling. I was accused of inciting a riot that I did not incite because it wasn't a riot. And yet we've got people standing tonight on the floor of the U.S. Capitol who in fact incited a riot, an insurrection, and a violent mob, and they are taking the microphone as if nothing has occurred. This is due to the complicity of elected officials, of appointed officials, of media platforms, certainly of law enforcement that, to be clear, did not just stand by while these things happened and provided, as was said, an unprofessional response. We have video of several law enforcement officers actually encouraging, participating, and permitting these activities, opening barricades, taking selfies with these insurrectionists. We have to be very, very precise here about exactly what happened. It wasn't just that the police stood by and did nothing, is that some of them actually encouraged and participated in activity that was a direct violation of the Constitution and was a clear example of domestic terrorism. You know, Brian, I think we use words a lot and we don't always make sure that we're clear about precisely what they mean. This is the literal example of white supremacy. What does white supremacy mean? It means that white people believe that they have dominion over everybody and dominion over everything, that they are in fact supreme. So we saw a group of white people, of white supremacists here, thinking that they own a country that they colonized and therefore they can do whatever they want with it. They think they can storm any building in that country because they believe they own it. They think that they can erect a noose on the side of a building that was built by enslaved Africans in America because they think they have full permission to do so and did so on camera because they knew the police would do nothing about it. But they do not own this country. They do not own democracy. They don't own us. They are tragically confused, and we will not be intimidated despite the fact that the police did not hold the line today.
As a result, the sergeant at arms for both the House and the Senate have both resigned, as has the Capitol Police Chief. And several officers are also being investigated.
The question in the wake of last Wednesday's assault on the U.S. Capitol is why weren't rioters stopped? Images flooded the internet last week of police officers badly outnumbered as domestic terrorists stormed one of the country's most important democratic symbols. But the inaction of some officers has been flagged as suspect. Now, as law enforcement agencies nationwide face threats of more violence, a wave of suspensions and terminations is raising questions about elements within the country's public safety departments. A new report from the Washington Post says police departments across the country are investigating their own officers for their proximity to or alleged involvement in the gathering that ultimately culminated in the Capitol Hill riot. Kim Bellware is a Washington Post reporter and the author of that report. So the right to free speech is a founding principle of our country. Can you explain more about how a police officer's expression of political views might impact their employment in this situation?
Well, most police departments across the U.S., they do have the ability to exercise their right to free speech. Most departments do have policies that prohibit officers from making any kind of political speech or demonstration while in uniform, while they're out of uniform, as long as they're not violating any departmental guidelines around behavior, they're usually fine. But this incident on Wednesday is raising a lot of questions because there's definitely kind of a line between who was attending a rally and who was participating in this riot at the Capitol. And that's something that departments are now having to wade through because they're going to be looking at if a crime was committed by any officers, but also were there any non-criminal actions that might have violated departmental guidelines.
Right, and one concern raised in your article is that disciplining officers for being present at a violent riot could have unintended consequences that could harm vulnerable communities. Can you explain that?
Yeah, this is something that some legal experts and other First Amendment experts were paying attention to because, as you had just mentioned and had asked, police officers do have a right to free expression. And, the argument that was raised is that if we start policing or if departments start cracking down on what demonstrations are okay, what is to say that that is not going to then come up next summer if there is a Black Lives Matter protest, if there is some kind of, demonstration for whatever cause. So the concern is that being too broad about what is punishable behavior could ultimately widen the scope of that will ultimately limit speech for everybody else.
Well, how could these investigations impact the police departments themselves? Is there a sense they could affect morale or effectiveness?
There's definitely a question of morale, and with these departments, there's so many questions about who is involved. In one case, it was the police chief, it was leadership that was involved. So there are all these different considerations that departments are having to make because if some chiefs, if they are going really hard in punishing or otherwise sanctioning their officers, even for showing support. Maybe they didn't even participate. This is something we've seen out of Oakland County in California. They've warned that even officers who like things on social media that express support for the insurrection, that could run afoul of guidelines. That has the possibility of diminishing morale, but there's also for the public wants to know that they can have confidence in their police force, and they want to know that the police is supportive of the rule of law. So there's a lot of things that departments are going to have to contend with, from morale to freedom of speech for their employees.
So on this note that you just mentioned, we know that in communities of color, there is a deep distrust of law enforcement, given the history of inequality in the criminal justice system. Could these investigations in any way help restore that trust?
I mean, that's an open question right now. There was a really great article that BuzzFeed News put out that gave the perspective of Black officers who worked with the Capitol Police, and they had a completely different experience of feeling unsupported, of feeling threatened. So if there is a way that all of these investigations and questions can make departments reflect and ask really hard questions about how their actions in public and even in the semi-privacy of social media reflect on policing at large and contribute to the lack of trust that communities, particularly communities of color, have with the police, then that could ultimately maybe yield some positive conversations and lead to the kinds of changes that we saw in civil rights protests from last summer.
Since then, 2 more cops have been arrested and more arrests are coming. Once again, America, Black folks have been trying to tell you. There's a decades-old report by the FBI that deals specifically with white supremacists infiltrating America's police departments. But you ignored it.
And Skip, what we got an opportunity to see yesterday is 2 different Americas, and why the NBA and the WNBA and so many people around the country, especially blacks, have been taken to the streets. It says we're treated differently. Now, we hear what you tell us, that America is the land of, and America is great. But we're saying we're treated differently in similar circumstances as white people. We're seeing it. And Skip, everybody got an opportunity, just like the George Floyd. We saw the man's life leave his body on live television. We saw yesterday on live television 2 different Americas. And what we saw is that white America doing rioting and looting, The Capitol. How is it now that white America, that we've been asking you to hear us and say there's two different Americas, and you tell us, no, everything's the same? I want to ask this. If you're not going to treat white America like you treat black America, can you treat black America like you treat white America?
Oh yeah, quick question. Why haven't we heard a peep out of the Blue Lives Matter crowd after a police officer was bashed in the skull with a fire extinguisher? How about the police officer that was crushed against the door that terrorists were trying to break through? Now, there is a story of a young officer being hailed as a hero. His quick thinking saved the lives of every politician in the building that day.
A lone black lawman momentarily facing down an angry mob of white rioters before retreating, giving ground to their fury. But as we've now learned, there's a bigger story to be told here. Seeing that they were heading towards the open Senate chambers, Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman took control of the mob, giving its leader a shove to get his attention and then drawing them away in pursuit. In short, he tricked them, willingly becoming the rabbit to their wolf pack, pulling them away from the chambers where armed officers were waiting, avoiding tragedy and saving lives which included their own. An Army veteran who spent time in Iraq, Goodman's actions bring a measure of honor to a police force that saw some of their members acting quite questionable. Calls have come for him to receive national commendation for his actions, perhaps even the Congressional Medal of Honor. Now, that's not my call to make, but this man certainly deserves far more than our praise and thanks. Maybe our soon-to-be president will award a medal to someone other than a radio talking head, sympathetic politicians, or a few golfers, and also maybe a little pay raise as well. We saw the worst of our nature on display on Wednesday. Many people immediately stood up and said, "This is not who we are." History tells us this is exactly who we are. Running from this fact won't change it. But at the same time, we're also Eugene Goodman, a people who will put themselves in harm's way to protect others, even those that wouldn't do the same for us. It's a constant fight for the soul of this nation. Here's hoping that this example by Eugene Goodman, one of our better angels, can serve as a reminder of what we can be and help lead us in that direction. So to Eugene Goodman, I want to thank you for your service, sir.
Coming up, America fights back as Gunshots Straight from the Hip continues.
This is Mark Gunn Media.
Hit it! One of the biggest accomplishments we've had over the past year is the continued growth of our podcast, Gunshots Straight from the Hip. If you haven't heard it, you can check it out now on our website at markgunmedia.com or on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or the TuneIn Radio app. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Past episodes are available for download right now. Each episode is written and produced from a perspective not heard enough in this medium, the black perspective. However, Gunshot Straight from the Hip is not limited to a black audience. Anyone can get something out of it. We tackle social and political issues, sometimes some slice of life stuff, in a way that's very compelling and unlike any other podcast on the market right now. With my experience as an award-winning audio producer and a reputation for being rather outspoken, Gunshots Straight from the Hip is something you won't want to miss. Over the next year, we want to add more subscribers with a goal of 1,000 new subscribers every month. If you haven't joined us yet, go to our website at markgunmedia.com and hit the podcast link. You could also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're already with us, thank you. We just ask that you turn your friends and family on to us. Remember, we have a goal of 1,000 new subscribers every month, and we can't do it without your support. That's Gunshots Straight from the Hip, available right now at markgunmedia.com, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or the TuneIn Radio app. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.
Mark Gunn Media. No hype, no hoopla, just damn good work.
For downloads of this and past episodes and information about all the multimedia services we offer, log on to our website at www.markgunmedia.com. That's markgunmedia.com. Welcome back to Gunshot Straight from the Hip. My name is Mark Gunn, and we are talking about the aftermath of last Wednesday's domestic terror attack on the Capitol building in D.C. And one of the things that Trump supporters tried to do to justify its act of treason was claim that it was Black Lives Matter and Antifa that were behind the attack. Well, when that didn't work, they tried equating their treason to the mostly peaceful Black Lives Matter protests that happened over the summer. So while Trump's terrorists were playing blame the black guy, there was one good old boy who'd simply had enough.
Hope you're f***ing happy and sad, you little pants pieces of shit. Oh, we're going to storm the Capitol. Let's storm the Capitol. We're patriots. You're a coward. Patriots. Jesus Christ. Idiots that I played high school football with wearing a damn American flag bandana talking about we got to get up there and storm. We got to take our country back. From what? From what? What are you so upset about? What has anyone ever done to you? You entitled piece of shit. Don't you ever call me one again. Don't you ever say, Corey, you snowflake. You're a liberal. That means that y'all look. What? Want some people to not be sick every now and then? Is this the thing that you can't stand? So you've got to get in your piece of Ford F-150 you got from your dad, drive it to D.C. and pitch a fit? Is that what it is? Is it health care? Is it still with the guns? Is that what is it? You said Obama was taking them. 8 years ago you said that. Nothing. What is it that this country hasn't given you? You literally got escorted out of the Capitol building aside from the ones that they had to shoot. Is that what it takes? Did you just want to be a martyr? You're so pathetic. Do you not ever just sit there and think, my kids are going to see this. My grandkids are going to see this. They're going to put it in the textbook, and you're going to look like the dumbest mother in the world. Nobody will give a shit about Watergate. Nobody. Dude, I'm out of breath from how stupid y'all are. What is it that this country doesn't give you that you think you have to do some bullshit like this? But when you see a black person actually get shot, no gun in their hands, nothing. Oh, they should just comply. You. What is your damn problem? Just quit embarrassing me, man. I want my country back. How about that? Y'all, you cowards.
And this terrorist attack was not a random thing. It was planned, well organized, and one of the favorite tools of white supremacists is social media.
This is our capital!
As more video emerges, the clearer it becomes just how violent last week's mob was at the U.S. Capitol. In a crowd carrying flags that declared support for police, many at the Capitol last Wednesday went at the police with dangerous, deadly intent. Amongst the crowd were also many wearing or carrying the insignia of a litany of the extremist, neo-Nazi, and conspiracy-minded groups in America. There were multiple images about QAnon, the conspiracy theory that believes a cabal of Democrats and wealthy elites are secretly running a child sex trafficking ring, one that President Trump has been quietly working to destroy. There were members of the Three Percenters and the Oath Keepers, both among the many armed, militant anti-government groups in the country. There were various neo-Nazi and anti-Semitic symbols. These are members of the violent hate group the Proud Boys, flashing their white supremacist OK hand signal. In the aftermath of this attack, many of the largest social media and internet companies sought to clamp down on those the companies say are encouraging violence online. YouTube began removing live-streamed videos of the violence on Capitol Hill. Facebook said it took offline several forums, including one with thousands of members who, in advance of Wednesday's riot, posted the home addresses of federal judges and politicians, often accompanied with images of guns and weaponry. Facebook stopped the president from posting to his page. CEO Mark Zuckerberg justified the ban, saying, quote, "We believe the risks of allowing the president to continue to use our service during this period are simply too great." After some back and forth, Twitter permanently took the president's account offline and removed all his prior messages. In a statement, the company said, quote, "After close review of recent tweets from the real Donald Trump account and the context around them, we have permanently suspended the account due to the risk of further incitement of violence." These moves by the social media giants were applauded by some, though many said it was far too late in coming. Many conservatives, meanwhile, cried foul, alleging censorship against their political views. The social media app known as Parler, which was created to be a conservative alternative to Twitter, had been surging in popularity in recent weeks. It became not just an organizing platform for last week's Capitol protest, but full of numerous calls for violence and mayhem. Apple and Google both removed Parler from their app stores, and then yesterday, Amazon, which hosted Parler on its cloud web servers, booted the app offline, citing its inability to curtail violent language and imagery. As of late last night, Parler's website and app was not functioning, and today, Parler announced a lawsuit against Amazon, accusing the tech giant of trying to stifle competition.
As of this broadcast, close to 200 arrests have been made, and the FBI is not playing.
Since these events, the FBI has worked hand in hand with the United States Attorney's Office and our law enforcement partners here in D.C. and across the country to arrest and charge multiple individuals who took part in the destruction. In 6 days, we have opened over 160 case files, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. The significance of this investigation is not lost on us. This is a 24/7, full-bore, extensive operation into what happened that day. We cannot do our job without the help of the American people. Since our call for tips, videos, and pictures, we have received more than 100,000 pieces of digital media, which is absolutely fantastic. And we are scouring every one for investigative and intelligence leads. We continue to ask for more. If you have information, contact 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit photos and videos to fbi.gov/US Capitol, and that's Capitol with an O.
And people have been responding to almost a comical degree. Check this out. There was the 18-year-old young lady who outed her mother and relatives on Twitter as the terrorist who assaulted a black security officer. This is the very same woman who kicked her daughter out of her house for being in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. The terrorist got exposed, she lost her job, and the young lady that outed her has raised something like $43,000 for college. Good for her. And then there's another woman who took pettiness to a deliciously new level.
As the attack last week was going on, many people, like myself, were just shocked that this was allowed to happen, that all the warnings hadn't been heeded, and that so much of this violence and destruction happened, multiple people being killed. And at the time, one of the more shocking parts of it was that the people engaged in these crimes, in this attack, were so gleeful about the entire thing. And they wanted to make sure that everyone knew who they were. So they posed for photos, they live streamed it and all of that. Here is the issue, though. While the initial defense was seemingly purposefully haphazard, leaving the few cops in the area the impossible task of stopping hundreds of people from breaking in, the investigation afterward, a little bit more successful. So the template for what we're dealing with right here is step 1, F around. Step 2, they're finding out. So let's run through a few of these individuals. According to a tweet from Brad Heath, the shirtless man with furs and a horned hat photographed on the Senate dais during the Capitol siege, Jacob Chansley, has been charged with unlawful entry. He told the FBI he came to DC at the request of the president that all patriots come to DC. So Horn Man has been found. What about Lectern Man, the guy who had been walking around with the speaker's lectern? Yeah, he was caught. This is Adam Johnson. He was caught. He's being charged with, I think it was trespassing there and maybe some theft, obviously. Let's see. We've also got, this is just a fun one. Prosecutors have also filed charges of unlawfully entering the Capitol against West Virginia lawmaker Derek Evans, who posted a video on Facebook in which he shouts, "We're in, we're in. Derek Evans is in the Capitol." No word yet on how they tracked him down.
Social Security, 629, like... Come on.
I don't here's a map with directions to my house. You're going to want to hang a left at the rallies. Anyway, yeah, they found him. So one of the more haunting videos from the attack was a police officer being chased through the building. One of the men, you can see the screenshot, doing the chasing and sparring with the cop. He was also tracked down. This is Doug Jensen. He posted on Twitter back on November 12th that he was ready for 4 more years and will do whatever it takes. So whatever it takes turned out to be chasing a cop through the Capitol building. That cop must have been terrified that, like other cops, he could have been beaten and possibly killed by that mob of insane. Oh, by the way, on his shirt, I'm fairly certain that's a Q. So to give you an idea of who this person is, he believes in the QAnon stuff. He has been found, and he has been charged. We also have this individual. Why am I focusing on this one? Not just because that's hilarious. I know he thinks he looks tough, but
it's just so funny. It is so funny.
No. Anyway, that's a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. Larry Rendell Brock Jr. was charged with knowingly entering or remaining in any restricted building or grounds without lawful authority and violent entry and disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. Now, a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel taking part in this is madness. He apparently had some of those zip ties as well. So God only knows what he planned to do. He's been taken in. The only thing funnier than that is the photo. The only thing funnier than the photo is the fact that you know how they found him, Francesca? His ex-wife was watching the video and ID'd him and turned him in. Good. Anyway, so retired member of the military, an officer, took part in this attack. So we've gotten most, in addition to last week, the guy with the Molotov cocktails, he was tracked down. They haven't yet found the guy who planted the pipe bombs, but the guy who had his feet up on Speaker Pelosi's desk, who talked about going out of this world bathed in someone else's blood, he's been found. They've been tracking down, not obviously the vast majority, but the most notable people who promoted their involvement in this so much, they're now being systematically tracked down.
And one of the funniest things to come out of this tragedy came when these vanilla ISIS members tried to fly home. They were in for a rude awakening. When they got to the airport, and even on the plane in some cases, they suddenly found themselves on the terrorist no-fly list.
I love every single one of you, but this is what they do to us. They kick me off the plane, they call me a terrorist, and they want to ruin my life.
Now I know you're asking, how were these idiots found? Well, thanks to facial recognition software, the thousands of photos and video evidence provided by the terrorists themselves, it's probably not a good idea to live stream yourself committing an act of treason. And then there was the app formerly known as Parler, which was the alternative site for racists and right-wing nuts. Turns out that the attack on the Capitol was planned through this site. They had users prove their citizenship by uploading personal information like driver's licenses to the site. By the way, that's something you should never, ever do. Don't be that stupid. Well, an industrious young lady who was able to archive all of the user data and turned it over to the authorities. Parler, as of this recording, has been dropped from all of its social media platforms and will not be coming back. This follows all of Trump's social media accounts being dropped. He can't get online anywhere. Republicans haven't gotten away unscathed either. Corporate interests have decided to give them the big middle finger.
And some of the biggest American companies also taking action. JP Morgan, Citigroup are suspending all political donations after the Capitol riots. Meanwhile, Marriott and Blue Cross Blue Shield are halting donations to Republicans who voted against certifying Joe Biden's election victory.
And just yesterday, Congress finally took the step it should have taken over a year ago.
We've just witnessed a truly solemn moment in American history. The House of Representatives has reached the threshold for making Donald J. Trump the only president of the United States to be impeached for a second time. Unlike his first impeachment, this is a bipartisan vote, at least 9 Republicans agreeing with Democrats that this president poses a threat to U.S. national security and to democracy, that he incited the riot at the U.S. Capitol by repeatedly lying that he won the election and by urging his supporters to, his words, fight like hell. As he heads into the final week of his term, the 45th president of the United States now is poised to face trial in the United States Senate.
However, Mitch McConnell says that the Senate won't be hearing the case until after the 19th. But as Black America's been trying to tell y'all,
President Trump put the domestic terrorists on notice by saying, stand back and stand by. He then summoned them to D.C., directed them to march on the Capitol, and then he sat back and watched the insurrection. In the first impeachment, Republicans said we didn't need to impeach him because he learned his lesson, so no need to remove him. Well, we said if we didn't remove him, he would do it again. Simply put, we told you so.
Check us out on the next episode. You've been listening to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. The views expressed are those of the host and guests and not reflective of any business entity or anyone associated with this broadcast. If you have any comments or want more information on how to be a sponsor, log on to our website at markgunnmedia.com or call us at 502-407-0283. That's 502-407-0283. Thank you for listening.
Mark Gunn Media. No hype, no hoopla. Just damn good work. Just damn good work.